Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to another Word of the Day episode. I'm your host, Jamie Silva, and it is time once again to pleasantly explain a couple useful words. The first word today is misanthropic, and to introduce us to it, let's meet our next talented voice actor, Craig. Craig, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jamie. Great to be here. This adjective refers to someone who's just not a big fan of people in general. And this person, a misanthrope, to use the noun form, greatly prefers their own company to hanging out with others.
Yes, and not to get into the currently popular, 3 things introverts wish you knew about them topic, but it's important not to conflate misanthropes with introverts. The reason is that misanthropes aren't just made somewhat uncomfortable or fatigued by social interaction. Rather, to hyperbolize a bit, they oppose it strongly because they personally dislike their fellow man as a default. It's a bit of a Grinch mentality, honestly, except I guess that technically misanthropes are more likely to avoid people than to sabotage them. But the level of disapproval is similar, so sabotaging is at least possible.
Here's the online version of misanthrope. Quote, disliking humankind and avoiding human society, unquote. This is an all-right definition, but keep in mind that misanthropes probably aren't shut-ins. They walk among us. Really, some people would argue that we all feel a little misanthropic sometimes. And just because you don't like people doesn't mean it's practical to keep entirely to yourself.
Now it's time for an etymology interlude. Breaking down misanthropic a bit is actually pretty revealing. It comes from 2 Greek words, the first of which is anthropos, meaning man, which, by the way, is where we get anthropology, which is the study of man or people. And the second Greek root here is misos, meaning hatred. So, literally, in Greek, misanthrope is one who hates mankind. And that's pretty harsh. And actually, there was apparently a real person in ancient Greece named Timon, who suffered some misfortunes and started being mean to everybody on purpose as a result. And so, as a direct consequence of that, he was labeled Timon Misanthropos, which, translated, presumably comes out to Tim the Misanthrope.
Shakespeare told his story in the play Timon of Athens, which is one of his lesser-known works. And there's a key quote that really sums up just how misanthropic Tim was. It came from his epitaph, which is something you write on a tombstone for your friends and descendants to remember you by. And keep in mind, he wrote this himself. Quote, here lie I, Timon, who alive all living men did hate. Pass by and curse thy fill, but pass and stay not here thy gate.
Now, even though this has the feel of a terrible insult or perhaps a way to describe a radical, mankind-hating state of mind, I don't think that's the most common usage today. Maybe it was in Tim's time, but just not now. More frequently, you see people applying it to themselves in a self-deprecating or mostly facetious fashion as a way to explain their dislike of common social conventions or interactions. And let's see how in the examples.
Example number 1. I don't want to talk to any of the cashiers at the checkout stand, said Grant. It's kind of misanthropic of me, but can't I just get my groceries and go home? And stop saying that I bought your favorite kind of ravioli. Every kind is your favorite.
Example number 2. I always root for people to make embarrassing mistakes on game shows, admitted Darren. Does that make me a misanthrope? I don't know. It's just entertaining, and I think I have the right to be entertained. Also, the contestants usually annoy me.
Example number 3. Call it misanthropic if you want, but I'd much rather watch a movie at home than go to a theater, said Sarah. I don't need to take in my favorite films while surrounded by a bunch of randos.
Thank you, Craig. Let's hit one more word here. It's one of my favorites. It's hornswoggle. It's fun to say, obviously, and even though I'm guessing not many of you have heard of it, it's super useful. So hornswoggle is a verb, and in my opinion, it means to cheat someone, especially in a business setting. So a synonym for this would be bamboozle. So if someone sells you a fake Rolex or fails to deliver on a money-back guarantee, or maybe says you definitely need to replace those shocks on your car when they could actually easily go another 30,000 miles, those people are trying to hornswoggle you, which makes them hornswogglers. Now, just because a merchant makes a mistake doesn't mean they were trying to hornswoggle you. Like, if they ship you the wrong size overalls, unless they did it on purpose in order to cheat you, that's not hornswoggling. So, while accusing them of it might get you free returns, technically that just doesn't count as hornswoggling.
You know what sort of person is more likely to hornswoggle you, Jamie?
Who's that?
Misanthropes.
That's right. Now, let's hit the online definition here. Quote, to get the better of someone by cheating or deception, unquote. Now, I notice this does not say that you're cheating them in a business setting, so I'm probably wrong to narrow the meaning just to that. Now, keep in mind, Hornswoggle absolutely does work in business, but I think we can accept this broader, non-business meaning in addition to that. So just generally speaking, if you've been tricked, fooled, taken advantage of by means of deceit, then you've been hornswoggled.
Now it's time for some examples. Example number 1. Whenever he felt the Chipotle staff wasn't putting enough pork in his carne asada burrito, Pete accused them of hornswoggling him.
Example number 2 is a special guest example from the fantastic British author P.G. Wodehouse. Quote, would she have the generosity to realize that a man ought not to be held accountable for what he says in the moment when he discovers that he has been cheated, deceived, robbed, in a word, hornswoggled?
Example number 3. Susie had a sneaking feeling she was being hornswoggled when her father said that the monopoly rules permitted him to take a negative interest line of credit from the bank, in which the bank paid him 5% of the loan every time he passed go.
That'll do it for today's show. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you very much, Craig, for joining me. If you are not a misanthrope, you like people, and you like sharing fun things with friends, perhaps share this podcast with a friend. On the other hand, if you are a misanthrope and you dislike the show, then that's just one more reason to recommend it, only in this case, to your enemies. This has been the Word of the Day podcast. I'm Jamie Silva.